The Girl Who Burned the Moon. Episode 3. Moon. Wow, Elias wasn't lying when he said you had a boyfriend, a smooth voice said. I opened my eyes and saw my mum coming out of my wardrobe, holding my dress and putting it on my bed. I shook my head and even pinched myself, but sure enough, my mum was really there. I ran up to her and gave her a big hug, and I could see her huge grin spreading across her face. Mom! I gasped. When did you get back? What are you doing here? I felt really good and I closed my eyes as I felt her little hands pat my back. Oh, she said between choking and laughing. Honey, if you don't throttle me, I'll survive to tell the tale. I laughed and moved back a bit. Her eyes shone with happiness as her lips stretched into a smile. I came back when you were with your man, she winked. I almost groaned, but I held it in. I'm here to help with the wedding of Elias and Tasha, as you might have guessed. She gave me that "are you stupid" look, which I found funny. We're heading out tomorrow to get some fabric for the wedding dresses, have lunch with Tasha so I can get to know her properly, and go out to shop for wedding stuff. Why not invite your boyfriend along? I'd love to meet him too, she added. I looked at her, horrified. But Mum, I don't have a boyfriend. No way, Missy. I'll either invite him or go undercover and stalk you to get to know him. Stop lying about not having a boyfriend. It's clear you do. I know you. You're my daughter. I won't get mad. You're inviting him and that's final. Fudge balls. This is really not good. I plunked myself down on my bed, letting out a sigh. It felt good to finally relax after a long, hot day. My hair was in a high, messy bun and I was already in my pajamas. Those skinny jeans and flared tops were really uncomfortable all day. I took a deep breath, enjoying the cold air that sent goosebumps down my legs and arms. Yeah, you probably guessed. We went shopping all day. So, things like buying fabric for the dresses, silverware, having a meeting with the caterer and the party designer, purchasing wedding favors, trying food and drinks, and so on. My legs were absolutely knackered and my body was as stiff as a poker. I'm sure I'll be absolutely knackered when I wake up tomorrow. I didn't even feel like eating dinner because I was so tired. Absolutely, that's how tired I was. And no, I didn't invite my so-called boyfriend. Also, I didn't have one. So I just imagined that my boyfriend was with his dad. I don't think it counts as lying, I was just pretending. Those are two different things, right? Then, I started thinking about Kieran. He wasn't my boyfriend, but he came to mind all the same. I couldn't help smiling as I felt the blood surge to my cheeks. He seemed so normal. He seemed like just a hormonal teenage boy with problems like everybody else. There didn't seem to be anything about him that was supernatural or scary, even though he was a werewolf. I don't know why he doesn't talk about it more often. Whenever I ask him about werewolves, he'll answer, but then quickly change the subject. I could feel my eyelids getting heavy and the room going dark. I started to feel my breathing get heavier as I relaxed completely. I snuggled up close to my pillow and let sleep call me. I'm at a payphone. I'm trying to call home. All of my change I spent on you, Maroon 5 sang from my phone. My eyes were struggling to get used to the glow from my phone. I groaned and grabbed my phone from the lamp stand. Who's calling this time? Hello? I groaned into the phone when I answered it, forgetting to check who it was. Seriously? I heard Kieran's voice on the other end, and it was in a joking tone. Just so you know, I'm outside. I flipped onto my back and rubbed my eyes with my hand. What? I love them. And what did you just call me? Great. Stay outside. Talis. My new nickname for you. I didn't reply. I hadn't said anything for a while, so he thought I didn't understand, and he started explaining it to me. You see, because your name is Talia and I added an S, I get it, I said, scratching my face. Oh no, someone's on their period. Unlike you, I don't have my period every day. Then, out of the blue, I had a brainwave, and a sinister smile spread across my face. Oh, now I've got a nickname for you. I laughed evilly into the phone. Kier. He sounded like he had something stuck in his throat. You wouldn't. I could just see his eyes bulging out of his head. The image made me laugh. Oh, I would. Kier. Whatever, Talis. Anyway, that's not why I called. Aren't you going to invite me in? Aren't you on patrol? I asked in a weird way. That's the only reason he'd be outside, right? Nope, my shift's tomorrow, Kieran explained. I heard a dull thunk on my window. I went to the huge glass and had a look outside. And, of course, right in the middle of the lawn was none other than Kieran. The moonlight made his profile glow. Even if the lighting wasn't great, I could still make out the angular shape of his jaw and cheekbones, his red full lips, his hair, which he'd worn as a faux hawk tonight, and his crystal blue eyes that seemed to sparkle like diamonds. He was wearing his football varsity jacket and jeans, and wow, did it make him look cute. I'll be honest, he's a real looker. Cheers, Kieran said, cutting in. My eyes popped out of my head and I stuttered. How did you know what I was thinking? It's just a friend thing, love. Get used to it. I could see him smirking from here. He pulled back his arm and threw another rock to try and make me flinch. But I just stood there, unfazed. Throw it any harder, Romeo. Even if my window breaks, I won't be scared, I sighed. He laughed. Really? If you're not going to let me in, I could go to the front door and ring it instead. No way. I said to him, angry but in a quiet voice, as I walked up and down in front of the window. My mum wouldn't have had a clue who he was. Kieran's not the sort of person you'd want your mum to meet. That would just make her worse on my trail of having a boyfriend. If I were your boyfriend, I'd never let you go. I can show you places you've never been to before. Kieran started belting out the lyrics to Justin Bieber's Boyfriend on his phone, but I had to bite the bullet and interrupt. Bye, Kieran. I sang and hit the end button, ignoring his protests. I gave him a little smirk and looked out of the window again, eager to see his reaction. But he wasn't there. I can't believe it, he was just there 30 seconds ago. I looked towards the woods, scrunched up my eyebrows. Maybe he went in there or something. Are you scared now? Then someone whispered in my ear. I jumped a mile into the air, making my phone fly. I almost screamed, but the person clamped my mouth to shut it. Chill out, Talis. You're so tense. I nipped Kieran's hand to show I was annoyed, but he just took a step back, not bothered by my nibble. I gave him a quick look and a dirty look, but he just smiled at me. He laughed, going a bit red and pointing at me like he was a kid. You should have seen your face. Kieran. How did you get in here? I tapped my foot and looked a bit annoyed. Hey, just so you know, I'm a werewolf, Talis. He explained to me like I was a 5-year-old, flicking my nose. I rolled my eyes and crossed my arms. I shifted my weight to the other foot when Kieran looked me up and down. He was trying not to make it obvious, but he was failing miserably. His blue eyes turned a dark shade and somehow got bigger than normal. Veins started to show a bit at his neck. I looked at him, totally shocked and awestruck at the same time. What was going on with him? It was strange, but in a beautiful way. It was a bit scary, but also inviting. I was trying to figure out the whole look. But he shook his head and smiled. He looked me in the eye. I like your pajamas, he said, smiling broadly. I felt a bit red. I was as red as a tomato. I was wearing a purple, tight-fitting tank top and a super short black skirt with lace at the waist and a purple ribbon at the front. I don't mean to sound like a braggart, but the dress really did make my curves stand out, and my toned arms and long, creamy white legs were on show too. And my shorts hugged perfectly. I would have changed if you'd waited, you know. I'm not bothered, he said, his eyes casually checking out my body again. He took a sharp breath. I really don't mind. I snapped my fingers. Hey, Kier. He looked up at me, like he was wondering something. Yes, eyes up here. Now, why are you here? Then, the strangest thing happened. Kieran Redford went red. He actually blushed. His cheeks were slightly pink. I was taken aback. I just wanted to chill. Really? Why are you here? Like I said. I wanted to chill, he said, looking irritated. He scratched the back of his neck and looked at the ground. He's not one to admit to much. Especially when he's being nice. He took out a brown paper bag from his hand that I hadn't noticed before. He was a really quiet guy. I brought Ben and Jerry's strawberry ice cream. I'm sure it's your favorite. And I also rented a movie. Well, I hope Captain America is all right. I was taken aback by the idea of spending time with him that night. Well, it was mostly because he was a bit shy. Kieran Redford, shy? I stood there, rooted to the spot. He took this as a bad sign, scratched the back of his neck and looked down again. You know what? I should just leave, he said, hitting the door with his thumb. You can keep the ice cream. Sorry. That got me out of my shocked stage. He felt embarrassed. I really didn't like it when people felt embarrassed. I was a bit afraid to say no, partly because he was actually being nice, and partly because I wanted to hang out with him. No way. I let out a yelp and grabbed his arm. He turned around and gave me a suspicious look. I let go of my death grip, stood up straight and coughed. "I'd love to hang out with you." So, that's how we ended up sitting on my bedroom couch, eating popcorn and staring at the TV. He sat at one end and I sat at the other. I thought he was looking in my direction a few times. But I just kept on munching on my popcorn. I saw him shrug off his jacket out of the corner of my eye. He was wearing nothing but a white fitted t-shirt, and it looked absolutely delicious. "I'm starting to think I'm a bit of a pervert." He coughed, trying to get my attention. "So that's what I did." He looked at his legs and scratched the back of his neck, feeling a bit nervous. His voice was barely a whisper that night, just like it had been the previous evening. "My dad, he yelled at Lila today. He was so angry that he almost hurt her. He came home drunk and started calling Lila stupid just because she looked so much like her mum. I'm not sure. I lost control." He ran a hand down his face and he looked like a lost child. I held my knees close to my chest and let him finish. My eyes opened really wide and my lips parted slightly, because I was so shocked. I punched him and told Lila to stick around with Beck and cruise tonight. "I just don't get it. My dad is alpha, but I feel that my power is stronger because it's my time to reign soon. But I'm not sure, Talis. I wish I didn't have so much power because I wouldn't have hurt the only parent I have now. I feel like my mum's looking down at me and shaking her head at me in disgust." He looked up at me with a playful glint in his eye. "I wanted to hang out with you tonight because you make me forget about things." It made me jump up and hug him. And it was a proper hug. I wrapped my arms around his neck and pulled him close, loving his woodsy scent. It took him a while to respond, but I felt his strong arms slowly wrap around my waist and his face hide in my shoulder. I could tell he was shaking. Strange, warm droplets fell on my shoulder and I soon realized that Kieran was crying. His sobs grew louder and his arms around my waist held on to me tighter. "Talia," I let her down. I pulled away and looked at his face. His face was wet and his eyes were all red. I gently took his face in my hands and wiped away the tears with my thumbs. It was weird seeing a guy like him cry. And rare moments like these always made me feel for them. "Look at me," I said, surprised my voice wasn't wobbling. "Kieran, you did something really bold tonight. If your mum isn't proud of you, she's glad and happy that you kept her daughter safe. You showed her you could protect Lila and be the strong boy you are. If your mum is disappointed, it's down to your dad." He nodded and let his arms drop. "Can I just hold you tonight?" I eased myself down and rested my head on his chest, his arm around me. "You don't even need to ask," I said, smiling when I saw him grinning. As it happens, we missed most of the start of the film. So now, it was time for Captain America to show off his body. I licked my lips and drooled a little. Wow, that's my hero. I'd love to see a stud in his ear, though. Oh my god, he's so hot. I said, forgetting Kieran was behind me. I could feel him breathing rapidly as he laughed. He's not as good looking as me. You like earrings? I rolled my eyes at his first statement and waved it away quickly. I just gave a little shrug. Earrings are cute. I'd rather have one earring than two. I'm not a fan of lip rings or other piercings. I like to keep it simple and just put it in the ear. Just to let you know, I'm not trying to offend anyone who has piercings in other places. This is just Talia's personality. I've got one earring on my nose just for proof. Wink, he stroked my hair slowly and, as much as I hate to admit it, I loved it. Chris Evans is so much hotter than you, Kier, I said, smirking. Kieran's hand went completely numb. I knew he would hear me. He pretended to gasp and said, "What did you say?" "Chris Evans is hotter than you, Kier," I said, crossing my arms. With his arm still around me, he started tickling my belly. I couldn't stop laughing and ended up snorting again. He laughed too, because he knew he'd got me. I tumbled off the couch and started legging it. "Hey!" he yelled. But he was a fast werewolf, so he grabbed me and pinned me to the wall, tickling my sides again. "Okay, cool." I giggle and say, "Sorry," I said, out of breath. "That's more like it," Kieran said, grinning. He put his arms around me. Then, it instantly dropped because he noticed how close he was to me. I could feel the heat from his body radiating on my skin and, if I could, I would bathe in it forever. The light from the TV flickered on his handsome face. His woodsy smell made me feel a bit dizzy. Most importantly, his eyes were so intense that they made me feel wanted and adored. Was it me? Or was this moment just a rerun? He looked from my eyes to my lips, his pupils getting bigger and going from black to crystal blue again every second. I could see his Adam's apple moving down as he swallowed. I couldn't help myself, as I looked at his full lips too, trying to memorize every crack on them. The light scar line was slightly slanted to the right. I gently moved my hand to his lips and traced the scar on his bottom lip. Kieran shuddered involuntarily. I looked at his eyes, which were on my lips. But he didn't move or try to move. He looked confused. He was clearly scared, just like me. But it was time for a change. So, I got a bit of a shock when I felt his soft lips on mine. "Here's Kieran's take on things. You stupid." I heard my dad's voice booming around the house. It was slurred and hard to make out. He was clearly drunk again. "You're so pathetic. The nights my dad comes home drunk are the nights he thinks of my mum, which was pretty much every night. The rare nights he actually comes home sober are when he's in a meeting or doing his alpha job. It was pretty normal for my dad to come home drunk. But he never came home yelling and getting mad at anyone. He'd usually just go off to his room and slump down on his bed. I closed the door quietly, stayed where I was and listened to the yelling. My eyebrows went up a bit when I heard the soft cries of the person he was yelling at. He was probably yelling at one of the older werewolves of the pack, probably for stepping foot in the other pack's territory without permission. "You're useless." My dad carried on yelling, and it was like his voice was shaking the picture frames in the hall. That was the great thing about being an alpha. You didn't listen to anyone, but now everyone listens to you, and you have the most power and the strongest out of all of them. "Daddy, please. Why are you yelling?" Lila asked, her voice small and confused, hurt written all over it. I pricked up my ears at my sister's voice. That was all it took for me to run into the kitchen. My dad was turning his back on me as he cut into Lila's begging. "Shut up, you. Then he looked up at the ceiling, as if he saw God there or something. You think this is funny? Is it a look-alike of my wife that's giving me the eye? Lila was in the corner, trying to get as far away from my dad as possible. I was rooted to the spot, totally shocked at what was going on. Her red, puffy eyes met mine as she wiped the tears rolling down her cheek with shaky hands. My dad took a big swig of his scotch from the glass cup. After he'd finished, he ran a hand through his grey hair, clearly frustrated. He kept looking at the glass and at his sister, and then he finally swung his hand back and threw the cup, trying to hit the wall right above Lila's head. I thanked my werewolf abilities as I ran in front of Lila and caught the glass just before it was about to hit the wall and shatter all over my sister. I took the glass and put it down on the counter closest to me, then I looked at my dad with narrowed eyes. "Hey son," my dad said, his voice a bit higher than usual. "Now go to your room and leave me alone." I should have been affected by it, seeing as he was alpha. I was just following instructions. But actually, I didn't. It was as if I had been hit by a bolt of energy. I crossed my arms and shot him a dirty look. No, my dad looked a bit confused, like he was trying to smile, but it was more of a frown. His eyebrows shot up in surprise. I just stood there, ready to react to his next move. "Well, looks like we've got no choice but to do this the hard way," he said, grinning, and started stomping towards us. He tried to push me away, but I stood my ground. "Hey, girl, get over here!" My dad shouted at Lila, who was standing behind me, and he went red. "Yeah, Alpha," Lila replied, not even looking at me as she went past and went over to my dad. She stood there like she was innocent and had been put in jail. She was glued to the ground, trying to wriggle out of my dad's orders. She looked like she was feeling fear, hurt, confusion and all the other emotions. She closed her eyes as a tear rolled down her face. Just before my dad was about to whack her, I grabbed his hand and punched him in the face, knocking him out in the process. I looked at my hand in shock and saw my father's body on the ground. Did I just do that? No way could I have punched the alpha, my own dad. Grabbing my hair in frustration, I yelled at Lila. "Lila, get out of here and stay with Beck and Cruz for the night. Please wait for my permission before returning. He'll be up soon, and I don't want you to be here." I started to shake, feeling scared and helpless. I was in a really bad situation. This can't be good. I begged my mum for forgiveness, knowing she was up there, staring at me with a look of disapproval. I got down on my knees next to my dad's body. "I'm so sorry, Mum," I whispered, my voice cracking. Lila gave me a comforting hug. Kieran. "Thank you," she said, looking into my eyes. "Mom would be proud of you." I just sat there, not saying anything. I didn't believe what she said. How could my mum be proud when I hurt her husband? My father? Lila gave me a proper hug before she left. I was there for ages, just sitting there, and eventually I shook my head. I had to make a move. I just had to see her. She's my only escape. Talia's POV. Kieran's hands came down from the wall and rested on my waist. He pushed me further into the cold barrier, pressing his muscular body against mine. It was as if he couldn't get enough. I couldn't get enough either. He let out a soft growl as his lips moved against mine. Gosh, that was a bit cute. I wrapped my arms around his neck. My hands moved by themselves, playing fully running through his soft hair. I was surprised to find my eyes even fluttering shut. I could feel his teeth nibbling on my bottom lip and I moaned into his mouth. I would have fallen to the ground if it hadn't been for him holding me up. He was making my knees go weak. His tongue slid against the bottom lip, as if it was begging for entry. But I'm not one to take it easy. So, I took his bottom lip between my teeth and pulled it a bit. This made him moan and growl at the same time. It wasn't just good, it was something else entirely. It was really cute. He pushed himself into me a bit more, and I could feel little Kieran getting excited. That made me go as red as a tomato. I have to admit, I was also quite turned on. That would be a lie. Then he licked my bottom lip again, and this time I let him in. He put his tongue in my mouth and started stroking my tongue too. I'm really sorry, but he tasted delicious. I let out a loud moan as I tugged his hair, enjoying myself. This kiss was a bit of a whirlwind, but it was all in good fun. His lips felt rough, but also kind. He says he's been waiting for this moment forever, but he wants to let me know he could wait. It was a roller coaster of emotions: gratitude, adoration, fear, and the like. I've never been so moved by a kiss. That's why I never wanted this moment to end. The way his tongue swept across mine was like a burst of flavor in my mouth. The way he wrapped his strong arms around my waist told me he would protect me at all costs. The way his thumb stroked circles on my lower back made me feel like he would comfort me and be kind to me. I was dizzy just from the general. He made me feel good about myself. I couldn't get enough of him. I loved how he showed his true feelings, and the way he was around me always made me excited for the next day. He was a bit different. Kieran let go of the kiss, so we could both breathe again. I was out of breath, and he was too. He rested his hand on mine and looked straight into my eyes. I was shocked again by the darkening of his pupils and the way it grew bigger before going back to his normal, beautiful, crystal blue eyes again. His rough hand came up to my face and stroked my cheek. He smiled broadly, and a dimple appeared on his cheek. I was pretty sure I was smiling like crazy, too. He kissed me again for a few seconds and then said, "You." Then the window Kieran was throwing rocks at a few hours ago broke, cutting him off mid-sentence. The glass shattered into a million tiny pieces as Kieran tried to shelter my whole body with his. I let out a loud scream. "What?" Kieran grumbled when we finally calmed down. He let go of me and turned around. I let my eyes wander at the tiny glass pieces on my carpet that were sparkling under the moonlight. But that's not what caught my eye. Kieran took a careful walk around the shards, trying not to get his feet cut. He picked up the massive rock that had just smashed the window. All over the rock were words written in red ink. My eyes opened wide when I saw the small print. I was rooted to the spot as Kieran looked at me to see if I'd give him the nod to go on. My mouth felt like there were a million cotton balls in it and my throat was unexpectedly very dry. So instead, I nodded, even though I was feeling hot even when the cold air from outside was blowing across my skin. Kieran gave me a cautious look before reading the words on the rock. "I thought you wouldn't be scared, even if your window breaks, love?" "Love," the iron justice. I've never been so scared in my life. I was absolutely petrified and ended up shaking like a leaf. My palms were sweating as I felt a bit of a heat wave kick in. I could literally feel my head spinning as my vision became blurred, with black gears obscuring my sight. My ears were ringing with shock and exhaustion. I breathed heavily, looked at Kieran one last time and saw him looking out of the window at the rock and the woods. I saw his nose come up close to the rock, sniffing it as his eyes turned a golden color. I was so overwhelmed that I just gave into it. Talia. I heard Kieran's voice and then I was on the ground. Hey, just wanted to let you know that I've got the lowdown on the latest developments. Oh, my darling, I heard a woman's voice sob, then I felt a peck on my forehead that was all too familiar. My eyes fluttered open and I saw my mum. She was sat on the couch next to me, looking over at me like she was trying to protect me. She pulled her red lips into a smile, but it was tight as she was trying her best to be strong in front of me. But I knew it was all an act, because I could see her little, shaking hands as she tried to push a hair away from my face. Even her eyes, which were all swollen and red from crying, confirmed her worry. She tried really hard to sort out her hair because, as I said, she wanted to show me what a good parent she was. But I was kind of sick of her being my hero. It's all she's ever done, even though she didn't even want it in the first place. We all know that when you're in pain, worried or feeling down, the last thing you want to do is keep it to yourself. You want to let it out of you physically, even if the pain was just emotional and mental. I tried to stand up, but this wave of dizziness hit me and I almost fell off the couch. I felt someone grab my arm and gesture for me to lie down again. No way, ma'am, you're not getting up just yet, my mum said. How are you doing, my darling? My mum suddenly blurted out, her voice going high. Oh, let me go and tell Mabel that you're ready for your soup, that is, if you are ready. Are you ready? I mean, we could wait. Oh, never mind, I'll go get it. As she stood up, I grabbed her arm, not wanting her to go. I found the smell of Chanel perfume comforting at the time. She smiled gently at me before sitting back down and looking to her right. Knox and Damien, right? She said politely. I looked over and sure enough, there were Knox, Damien, and Kieran sitting on the love seat, all squished up together as they tried to be generous and respectful towards my mother. I knew why they were here, but my mum didn't. So imagine my horror when I saw Knox and Damien shirtless. I knew for sure that this didn't look good to my mother. My eyes opened really wide and it felt like it was going to bulge out of its eye sockets. Afterwards, I was gobsmacked. I was pretty surprised that mother caught all of them. The other part was me, being the total teenage girl I am, decided to check them out. And wow, speechless doesn't even cover it. But I couldn't help comparing them to Kieran. I quickly stopped talking and watched the awkward situation play out in front of me. Yeah, that's right, Knox replied politely, smiling slightly to try and cheer me up. Oh, please call me Serena, my mum said with a wave of her hand while she showed off her pearly whites. This made my eyes widen again. Can I ask you two a favor? Anything, Damien said, standing up and crossing his arms. Can you help Miss Mabel with the soup, please? And if you want to, That's great. She waved to all the boys. You can eat too. Mabel's chicken and corn soup is amazing. Cheers, Serena, Knox and Damien said, nodding their heads to show they were grateful. I watched their backs as they disappeared, then I turned to my mum with the best apologetic look I could muster. Mom, I could explain. I started looking everywhere but her eyes, before stuttering. Well, these guys were actually helping me out with some studying. After a long moment of silence, I looked at my mother. She raised her eyebrow and would have laughed, but she didn't want to embarrass me. Talia, don't worry, love. I knew why they were really here, my mum said, smiling lazily. What did they tell you? I said, narrowing my eyes. Don't worry about a thing. I said, okay, okay, but it was more like I was asking a question. Don't worry about it, love. I'm just grateful they were here, she said, glancing at Kieran. That's when I really got to know the amazing guy who swept me off my feet. His hair was a mess. His eyes were glazed with uncertainty and it didn't take me long to notice the golden specks forming, his pupils dilating. He was lost in thought, looking at the far wall behind me as he leaned his chin on his fists, which were resting on his knees. He looked like a statue. It was so emotionless and still that it scared me. I was worried that if anything dared to make a move on him, he'd probably beat the crap out of it. What I want to know, my mum said, breaking the silence. That's why he looks more scared than you do. Why did he seem so overprotective of you? Even when I tried to come near, he kept you all to himself. Why? I immediately flushed, trying to hide my face in the couch cushion. I heard my mum's soft chuckle and she took the cushion off my face. She smiled at me warmly, like a mum does with her child. Mom, there's nothing going on between us, I said, covering up. She snorted. My mum actually snorted, and not only that, but she rolled her eyes at me too. Come on. Even a blind man could see something is going on. He wouldn't be this way if there was nothing, she pointed out. We were just really good friends, you know. It's okay, honey, to fall in love, she said quietly before holding my hand. Just because your dad and I didn't work out in the end doesn't mean it can't work out for other people. I mean, look at Gram and Gramps. They've been married for 45 years. She smiled gently at the memory, but then her eyes went all glassy and distant. I'm sorry, Talia. About what? I said, barely above a whisper. For letting you and Elias down, she sighed. For letting you believe those silly things that love isn't worth it, because it is. It really is a work of art. I mean, look where your dad and I ended up with my unconditional love for both my kids. I know I let you guys down sometimes, and I'm not always there. Trust me when I say that I'm truly sorry and deeply regret it. Mom, please, don't, I said, voice wobbly as a tear trickled down my cheek. Don't beat yourself up. If anything, you're the best I could ever ask for. I felt her wipe away my tear with the back of my hand as she smiled at me. Honey, I want you to be happy. This boy, she started, nodding her head towards Kieran, is everything I wish my daughter could ever be with. Is it because he was there? Nah, love. It's because I could see he makes you happy, she interrupted. I looked at Kieran again and couldn't help but smile. I just wished he'd snap out of that daze and look at me, and I wanted him to sweep me off my feet with that amazing smile of his. I was craving the warmth of his lips on mine and the warmth of his body next to mine. How long has he been like that? I asked her, turning back to my mum, who was watching me. Oh, about 3 hours, she shrugged. 3 hours. I said, looking at him again, feeling shocked. What time is it? Yeah, right after you fainted and the cops came over to inspect that window. It's about midnight by now. When I mentioned my window, I shuddered. I looked at my mum and you could see the fear in my eyes. She patted my leg, telling me that everything was going to be all right. But I knew it wasn't. Things were getting worse. I was curious if my mum was aware of my previous run-ins with this enigmatic iron justice. Mom, I watched as her gaze turned to me slowly. Hey, do you know about? Hey guys, I heard someone shout through the house. The deep voice bounced off the walls. We're finally home. Just as she'd predicted, Aunt Mabel arrived with Knox and Damien right behind her. Aunt Mabel had her hands full with kitchen gloves, holding a pot of soup. Knox had a couple of glass bowls and spoons in the other hand. Damien had a pitcher of what looked like iced tea and some paper cups in his other hand. I smiled as Aunt Mabel told the boys what to do. Then she looked at me. Her face was all lit up and her smile was huge. Oh dear, she said, patting her grey hair down. How are you feeling? I thought I'd whip up some of my famous chicken and corn soup, just in case it starts raining on your sunny day. And, of course, Elias chooses to come in at that exact moment, me lying on the sofa with Mum close by, Kieran in a total haze, Aunt Mabel bringing me chicken and corn soup that she always made on our bad days, and the two shirtless boys doing what Aunt Mabel told them. He stuck his head round the corner, mouth open, before stepping fully into the room. His thick eyebrows scrunched together as he saw the scene in front of him. I'm not sure I understand. Is there something I'm missing? Hey guys, so we need to okay, wow. Now, I'm confused, Tasha said, stepping in next to Elias. He put his arm around her shoulders, and her eyebrows scrunched up. We'll explain later, my mum said, laughing. So, how was your movie? Well, it was good. You know, men really enjoy chick flicks, Elias said sarcastically. Especially since the whole reason you watched the movie was to impress your girl. Then, she said she had a huge stomach ache and took almost an hour in that bathroom, he said, nudging Tasha's arm. She nudged him in the ribs and, amusingly, I watched him flinch from the impact. Honey, you weren't supposed to tell anyone about my private time, she hissed, smiling playfully at him. I just wanted to share my story that my girl takes longer than me in the bathroom, he said with a cheeky smile at her. Oh, just pipe down, you two, Aunt Mabel said, putting her hands on her hips. Don't make these two handsome fellows vomit, or you'll end up smothering them. I thought it was funny when the two lovebirds blushed. But I couldn't help laughing when I heard Damien and Knox's appreciative moans as they dug their faces into their bowl of steaming soup. Soon, everyone was licking their bowl clean and wanting more. Everyone around me felt so safe and I actually felt like I was in a family for once. It was a full and happy family, though some people, like the rest of the Moonfire and Eclipse Pack, were missing. I got up, took my bowl of soup and started drinking it. The hot soup was just what I needed to warm my throat, and the tastes were like fireworks for my taste buds. It made me feel all warm and fuzzy inside, and gave me that cozy home vibe. But it wasn't as hot as I was feeling when Kieran plunked himself next to me, grabbed me, and planted a big kiss on my cheek. I had a bit of a wobble when I saw that, but I got myself together again and put the bowl down on the coffee table in front of us. "Kier," I hissed, but that just made him pull me closer. I was pretty sure my face was as red as Aunt Mabel's toenail polish. "Kieran," I whispered, this time a bit louder. His scent was driving me crazy, and his warmth was enough to make me weak in the knees. Good thing I was sitting on this couch, or else I might have fallen again tonight, and nobody would like to see that again. I could feel his muscled chest on my back through our thin t-shirts. I could feel his hot breath on my hair and his strong arms around my waist, and it made me feel safe. "Chill out, Talis," he whispered in my ear, kissing my earlobe. "Just let me hold you." "Yeah, Talia," Damien said, chewing thoughtfully. "We already know you two are an item." "MMMMHM," Knox mumbled from his bowl. "What? What's going on?" "I'm lost again," Elias said, looking at Kieran and I with narrowed eyes. It looked like he was trying to play the big brother role. If I could, my face would go a deeper shade of red. "Oh, Elias John, don't take this the wrong way, Mum," she said. "You wanted someone for your sister in any case. You said something about her being a prude, and she's only 18. "Mom, she's giving me the death glare," Elias moaned, pointing to me. "If any one of us good-looking people is a prude, it's me you should point the finger at," Aunt Mabel said, sipping her soup and ignoring our burst of laughter and snorts. "Please, Aunt Mabel, Uncle Atlas loves you," I said, gasping and enjoying the chest that was moving up and down in laughter behind me. After we'd all had plenty to eat, we finally closed up for the night. We all mucked in to help Aunt Mabel clean up the mess, even though she kept protesting. Elias and Tasha left up the stairs while I told Knox and Damien to go home. When I walked out of the bathroom, I was surprised to see my mother and Kieran chatting in near whispering voices by the front door. As I got closer, I heard my mum say, "This is what I was afraid of. She can't know yet." I made sure I didn't make any noise as I went, so they wouldn't hear me. I hid behind the wall, my heart was beating really fast because I was worried about getting caught. I pressed my back against the maroon wall and looked at the two of them. I had a perfect view of them, but luckily, I was completely hidden. "I get it, Serena," Kieran said, rubbing a hand down his face. "You'll tell her soon, right?" "Yeah, Kieran," my mum replied in a reassuring tone, throwing up her hands. "But for now, that's how it is." I heard Aunt Mabel's footsteps on the stairs. I was worried that everyone would catch me eavesdropping, so I quickly stepped into the hall where my mother and Kieran were. They did a total 180. My mum threw her hand down and gave me a smile that said she knew what was going on, but she was just being innocent. She moved a bit to the side and ran her fingers through her hair. Kieran quickly straightened his posture and smiled at me too. So, I said, feeling a bit awkward. What were you guys talking about? About how you should stay with Kieran tonight, my mum quickly lied. When I heard her spout that awful lie, I raised my eyebrow, even Kieran looked pretty surprised. His mouth opened wide, and his eyebrows scrunched up together. Kieran just had to add, we were, to make it clear that what I said about my mum lying wasn't just a contradiction. My mum shot him a quick glare, narrowed her eyes at him, then smiled sweetly at me. Oh, Kieran coughed. Yeah, we were. Yes, she will. I can't have her sleeping in the house without security. I wouldn't bother Elias, but he's with his own wife. I'm sure you'll take care of my daughter, she said. What? I yelled a bit. Mum, you're really making me sleep over with a boy. She stood up straight, tilting her chin up. I could see the indecision in her eyes. Yeah, sweetie. I trust you and I trust Kieran. While I stood there gawping like a fish out of water, my mum pushed us out of the house before she could change her mind. Even Kieran looked surprised, as his constant blinking made it obvious. As she shut the door, I heard her yell, please, take care of her, and I don't mean in bed. Oh no, save me. Just to let you know, I've got a few more things to add. So, we're here, Kieran said, scratching the back of his neck and looking at the spot between my eyes. Is this boy being serious? He was gripping the steering wheel so tightly that his knuckles were turning white the whole way here. He barely said a word to me on the 10-minute drive to the Pack house, and it was driving me nuts. Actually, I think the only thing he said to me was, I hope you don't mind staying at the Pack house. Lila's the only one there. Well, we had to leave our house because of, you know, the situation with our dad. It was more like stuttering. I just gave a sigh and rolled my eyes. I strolled over to the wooden door of the yellow Pack house, with Kieran following a few feet behind. I yawned and my eyes were starting to feel heavy. It was probably already 2 in the morning and I was worried we might wake up a sleeping Lila. So, I just went in without knocking. Look, I know this might sound a bit harsh, but I really didn't want to wake Lila up, especially after everything she went through tonight. Kieran seemed to have read my mind. Wait, I forgot. He could read my mind because he quietly shut the door, the little click ringing through the silence. Then he switched on a lamp nearby so that I could see. Just as Kieran was about to say something to me, opening and closing his mouth a few times, Lila walked in with her head in a book. Her black hair was a mess and she was wearing a bright pink pair of pajamas. Hey, finally, you're home, she said, clearly picking up on my scent. She looked up, shut her book, and ran over to me, giving me a big hug. My breath was taken away as Lila raged on. Wow, Talia, are you okay? She asked, moving back from me a little, inspecting my arms and legs. I heard what happened. You know Pack stuff. I wish I'd come over as soon as I heard the news, but I didn't want to make things any worse. I'm not sure how to feel about that. Lila, I yelled over her rant, gripping both of her wrists. Chill out. I'm fine. She let out a sigh before giving me another hug. I'm just worried about you. Anyway, why are you here? I'm not saying I don't want you here, because I do. I just thought your mum would have wanted you home. Her thin eyebrows were scrunched up, leaving a crease between them. She looked over to Kieran curiously before scratching her face. I watched them silently, seeing their faces change expression every few seconds as they looked at each other. It didn't take me long to see they were having a chat by the pack link. I crossed my arms over my chest, not liking the fact that I was out of the loop once again. Okay, Lila sighed, clapping her hand once. I stood up straight as her blue eyes got bigger and she smiled at me in a way that made me feel a bit uneasy. You two have fun. I'm just going to hit the hay now, because I'm absolutely shattered, she said, stretching her arms and faking a yawn. Good night, mate. I hope you enjoy your stay. I'll be in my room if you need me. She hurried up the stairs after giving me a quick hug. I looked at Kieran, giving him a hard stare, and he just shrugged. Okay, I think you're probably tired. So, follow me, Kieran said, breaking the awkward silence. I followed him closely, and I could see that his shoulders were tense. When we opened the first door on the right, we found a room that was clearly Kieran's. The walls were a sort of grayish-blue color and his king-size bed, which was neatly tucked in, was in the middle of the room. The sheets were black and shiny, almost glowing from the light that was coming from the white lampshade by his bed. It was obviously black silk, and for some reason that made me feel really excited. The carpet was white and shaggy, which made the room feel really cozy. Even his sofa was white. There was a black door on the left wall, and it was clearly his bathroom. His massive mahogany desk, perched under the window on the right wall, was spotless. Everything in the room was tidy. I looked like a fish out of water, but quickly stopped myself from saying anything as I realized Kieran was watching my reaction. I cleared my throat and said, "Nice room, Kier." "Cheers," he replied before going to a mahogany dresser and rummaging through it. He got out a grey t-shirt and some blue basketball shorts. "So, I hope you don't get my drift. I know you're feeling a bit awkward in that shirt that you were sweating in all night, and those shorts are covered in little bits of glass. We're both hoping you won't feel awkward tonight." He handed me the items, but still didn't look me in the eye. I just let out a sigh as I watched him go back to his dresser, pulling out shorts and a shirt for him. He then sat down in his leather chair, still not looking at me. "Cheers," I sighed again and headed to the bathroom, feeling irritated by the way he was acting. I got changed quickly and groaned when the shorts kept slipping off. I decided to swap the shorts for the shirt, which was a bit of a shame. Luckily, the shirt reached mid-thigh and wasn't too short for my black lacy thong to peep through it. Then, I groaned again when I realized that the tank top I was wearing earlier had a built-in, and if I were to wear it again, I'd smell like a dying pig. I mentally kicked myself for not asking my mum to pack me some extra clothes before she sent me off here. I inhaled Kieran's amazing scent once more and opened the bathroom door, feeling a bit remorseful. Yes, I was feeling sorry for myself. I mean, what girl wouldn't, right? Kieran had his back to me as he played with a pencil on his desk. I saw he'd already swapped into a grey shirt and black basketball shorts. When he heard the door close again, he looked back at me. His smile faded as his eyes moved down my body, lingering a bit longer on my legs. His Adam's apple moved up and down as he swallowed, and his eyes got darker as they opened wider. He closed his eyes and shook his head, trying to clear his head. I felt my face go red, especially when I saw him try and hide his grin with a pillow. To be honest, I really wanted to pinch my mum for letting me stay here. I shifted uncomfortably and decided to throw the shorts at him, which he caught quickly. I said, "Sorry, the shorts were too big for me." You know, it just kept sliding off. He looked everywhere except where I was standing, staring at the bookshelf behind me. "Hey, do you want to borrow Lila's clothes instead?" "And no," I stuttered. "Now, don't get me wrong. I wasn't a slut or anything. I just didn't want to be a burden to Lila. You know when you feel embarrassed about staying at someone's place just to make things easier for them? Yeah, I was definitely feeling that right now. I really didn't like the idea of borrowing someone's clothes. Even Kieran's shirt was enough to make me feel like I was a nuisance. "No, you're not a nuisance. Actually, you're welcome anytime," Kieran said, moving to the bed to grab some pillows. He was acting a bit silly and not making eye contact with me on our journey here. "So, you can sleep on the bed. I'll take the couch." "Kieran," I said, grabbing his arm just as he was about to pass me by. I could feel the heat again, pulsing where we'd touched. He finally looked down at me with those beautiful blue eyes and I smiled slightly. He smiled back and I almost forgot what I was about to say. "Look, if you're not okay with me being here, I could go home or stay with Lila, but I really don't want to bother her." I started to move towards the door, but then I felt Kieran freeze under my hand. He looked distant and emotionless, like he always does. As he got to the door, he half yelled, "No." Then, he grabbed my waist, spun me around, and gave me a hug. He buried his face in my wavy hair, which was looking a bit rough at the moment. I let out a squeak when I felt his warmth seep through the thin cotton of our shirts. His chest was touching my chest, which made the blood rush up my neck and cheeks. "Please, don't leave. I can't bear the thought of you being out of my sight." I felt my arms wrap around him, my hands running up and down his back to show I was there for him. "Then why are you being like this?" I whispered in his ear. "I'm worried that I might hurt you, and I might lose control, especially when I see you in my shirt." "Wow, Talis, you're so beautiful and you smell so good," he said, inhaling my scent, which always makes me go weak in the knees. "That's why I'm worried. I don't trust myself." Hey, I said, sternly, pushing him away slightly. His arms were still around my waist, where I wanted them to be. I was holding his face with my hands, and his cheeks were a bit pink. His gaze was sending my heart into overdrive. "I trust you, Kieran," I whispered, going up on my tiptoes and giving him a lingering peck. I looked into his blue eyes, which were now fluttering closed. It was full of so much passion and adoration that it made the butterflies in my stomach even worse. My eyes closed as I felt his warm lips meet mine again. That was all it took for my toes to curl and my lips to stretch into a smile against his. He smiled and took my hand, which was resting on his shoulder, and we intertwined our fingers. His other hand was on my waist, bringing us closer. I could feel his heartbeat speeding up with mine, and at that exact moment, I just wanted to be with this guy. I could feel his tongue on my lips, so I let him in. We both groaned at the same time as we danced together. We shared a laugh as we sat there. This kiss was so sweet and passionate. It wasn't rushed, pushed, or rough. It was perfect. It made me think he wanted this moment to last as well, because he sucked my lips and kissed me like he was crazy. But I was just a normal person who eventually ran out of breath. Kieran noticed, so he pulled away and kissed the eclipse shape mark he'd given me that night. He then bit me. That was all it took for me to gasp and let out a breathy moan. He carried on messing up that sweet part, making it even worse for everyone to see. "You are mine," he murmured in my ear. He inhaled my scent deeply and kissed the mark he gave me. I shuddered when he lightly nipped it. "Talia, you're all mine, you get it." When he came back up and rested his forehead against mine, I smiled at him. The warm smile he gave me made my eyes sparkle with happiness. His eyes were getting bigger again, going from light gold to normal blue. I nodded and said, "Always, Kier." He laughed and pulled away, but not before he held my hand for a bit longer. "Well, you better get some sleep, Talis. I promised your mum I'd take care of you." He led me to his bed, pulling the covers for me as I laughed. I lay down on his soft bed and sighed, feeling the silk caress my skin. I only just realized that I was tired as I felt my eyes droop. "Hey, just wondering, what were you actually talking to my mum about?" I asked, my voice all raspy from exhaustion. He raised his eyebrows before answering seriously, "Just staying here, like she said." The way he said it made me realize that it was best not to ask any more questions. So I just nodded and yawned. Kieran gave me a quick kiss on the forehead before saying, "Good night, Talis." "Hey, where do you think you're going?" I asked, a bit annoyed, when I saw him heading for the sofa. "To sleep," he said, totally dumbfounded. I gave him a look and patted the spot next to me. "Nah, you're sleeping next to me." But he started, looking a bit unsure. "No way. Just come here," I said, crossing my arms and giving him the puppy dog eyes. "Please." He rolled his eyes, sighed and got in next to me, pulling the covers up over his head. I watched as he scooted a bit closer and wrapped his arms around me. "Okay, just for you," he said as I closed my eyes. "Whatever, you know you wanted to," I said, opening one eye. "Oh, come on, Talis, just go to sleep." I looked at his shirt and gave him a pointed look. "Just get comfy like you always do. Just stay calm and take your shirt off. Most of us probably know that most guys sleep without a shirt. It's like nature for them," I said, matter-of-factly. "You just want to see me shirtless," he smirked, waggling his eyebrows. "Maybe," I said, shrugging. "Just take off the shirt." He got up, threw on his shirt and flung it on the sofa. He looked at me like I was the one who was happy now. I gave him a little smile and a quick look, keeping my eyes on his six-pack. I nodded and he just snorted and said, "Perv." He got back down again, so I gave his shoulder a little pat. "Whatever." I tried to ignore the heat radiating from his body, especially being so close to him like this. I kept my arms to myself as he wrapped one around my waist. I was worried about what I might do if I touched that delicious chest in his six-pack. I was scared, like him, that I might lose control. Maybe we should be even. Take off your shirt, now. Kieran teased, smirking at me. I rolled my eyes and ignored the red tinting my cheeks. Then he didn't say a word, but looked at me like he was worried. His eyes met my green ones. His face said it all: fear, concern, doubt, etc. We stayed like that for a couple of minutes before I stroked his jaw with my finger to show I was there. "What's on your mind?" I said quietly. "Nothing," he lied. "We both know that's a lie. What's really going on?" "Well," he sighed and hugged me closer. "Don't get me wrong, but I've got a bit of a bad feeling about Tasha." "My brother's wife?" I asked, raising my eyebrows. "Yeah, I just think it was a bit weird that she's been off to the bathroom for nearly an hour, and we had that incident in your room. And ever since she arrived, you've been under threat. It's just too much of a coincidence." "Kieran," I sighed, rubbing his cheek with my thumb. "Tasha would never do that. We can't just assume things, can we? I know you're worried about me. Let's just drop it for now, okay? I'm really sleepy." He nodded and kissed my nose and forehead again. That was all it took for me to close my eyes and drift into a deep sleep. "Just to let you know, I've got a few more things to add." I opened my eyes and saw the light coming through the curtains. To be honest, I thought I'd catch up with Kieran, seeing as he was snoring right in front of me when I nodded off last night. But he was missing in action. But the sound of his snoring and the heat that was blowing onto my neck confirmed that he was now behind me. I could feel his arm around my waist and I would have felt comfortable in this position. But, of course, I didn't. I could feel him pressing against my back and my face went red at how big it felt. His leg, which was between mine, crept higher and higher, and the hand that belonged to the arm was rubbing my stomach all too passionately. Then his hand moved from my stomach down my legs, rubbing against my inner thigh and coming close to my private area. I made a noise, but he didn't hear me. As he was moving back up, I heard him mutter something, but I couldn't say what it was. His hand moved up my arm in a way that made me feel uneasy, and I couldn't help but get goosebumps. I felt his warm hand go back down to my belly before going back up and cupping one of my breasts, ignoring what he was muttering. Even if it felt really good, I squeaked in embarrassment, my face going a deep shade of red. This made Kieran look at me, eyes wide open, as he checked the room for any danger. He saw that I was red in the face before he followed his hand down to where he was currently groping. This caused him to jump back, almost falling off the bed and landing on the floor with a loud thump. I laughed at him, even though the situation was a bit awkward. I looked at his figure on the floor, his hand rubbing the back of his head. "I'm really sorry, Talis. I really didn't know what I was doing," Kieran said, smiling apologetically. "Oh, come on, big guy. You're always saying sorry for accidents," I said, annoyed, before pouting. "Aren't I entitled to a good morning kiss? Just to let you know, I've got a few more things to add. And finally, the moment you've all been waiting for," Father Paul said, smiling widely at the two couples who were looking at him eagerly. What was I saying again?" he asked, scratching his head where the hair was thinning. The corners of his eyes crinkled in amusement as he smiled at the couple, who were practically jumping up and down with impatience. The crowd laughed at Father Paul's sense of humor and Elias and Tasha's impatience. Well, it was a big crowd, with the whole of our small town's population there. We had everything from newborns to the elderly, and everyone was making history in our town. Even Tasha's immediate family was there, but wow, was it huge! She had about 17 brothers and sisters and 13 nephews and nieces. Some of her cousins and close friends were there too. I looked as happy as I could for my brother, with my lips stretched into a big smile that made the corners of my eyes wrinkle. I was glad our beauty artist had put on waterproof mascara and eyeliner, because I was crying and tearing up the whole time. I saw my brother, who was in a black tux with his hair slicked back, wrap his arm around Tasha's petite waist. He looked as charming as ever, with his brown eyes twinkling and a big grin on his face. Tasha wiped away a tear, her dark red lipstick really standing out against her pale, pretty face. Her dress was gorgeous, with jewels, studs and crystals that really made the ivory silk material of the corset top shine. The dress ended in a big poof that reached the floor, but when she picked it up so she could walk, we saw white pumps with intricate details. At last, her trail looked like a waterfall as it wound its way behind her. Her blonde hair was swept into an updo, with her fringe curled to frame her face. I thought the couple looked stunning perfect. My mum, who was sitting next to me on the pew, was crying quietly. She looked at me, smiled, and took my hand. I squeezed her hand as she whispered, "I can't believe he's getting married already. My baby boy, all grown up." I patted her hand and almost laughed, but we were in a church for crying out loud. I was one of Tasha's bridesmaids. If I laugh now, everyone's going to think I'm a bit of a joke. Okay, fine, Elias, Father Paul sighed, slugging his shoulders playfully. So, guys, the moment you've all been waiting for, or should I say the moment Elias has been waiting for. He smiled, adding a bit of drama, then raised his hands slightly and said, "You may now kiss the bride." Congratulations to Mr. and Mrs. Elias Ainsley. Everyone clapped and cheered as Elias got really close to Tasha. They looked into each other's eyes before they kissed. I smiled when their eyes closed and they embraced. I clapped and cheered along with everyone else. They pulled away, and everyone clapped again. Then we took some pictures, but the flash was blinding me. The pictures included family members, close friends, siblings, in-laws, and entourage. When we were done, I couldn't see a thing. Everyone left the church and waited in the car park, which was absolutely full of cars. There were even some parked near the road. I'm telling you, this was the biggest wedding I've ever seen in our small town. Right, everyone, Elias said, his arm still around Tasha. He raised his other arm in the air, his fist clear to the swarm of people. Let's party. I thought it was funny how he was so blunt about wanting to celebrate. I didn't blame him. He just got married to someone who loves him just as much, maybe even more. All I knew was that they were in love, and that was all that mattered. Oh gosh, Talia, Mum sobbed, wiping her eyes. Her cheeks and nose were red. She adjusted her light pink dress casually before giving me a hug. I can't believe my kids are growing up so fast. Mom, I laughed, but a deep voice that sent me shivers cut me off. Wow, Kieran said from behind me. When I turned around, he was standing there with his head held high and a little smile on his face. His blue eyes twinkled as he saw her smile at him appreciatively. I ran up to him, threw my arms around his neck and gave him a big hug, and he did the same. I flinched a little when I heard him sharply inhale my scent, and straight away, I felt his body calm down under my touch. I closed my eyes and enjoyed the warmth of him near me. Then he gave me a little push, took my hand and started spinning me around. You look lovely, he said, admiring my outfit. My dark hair was swept to one side in a fancy ponytail, soft curls falling through it. I wore makeup today, something I haven't done in a long time, and my green eyes really stood out against my dark, long eyelashes, which were covered in mascara. I was so surprised that even my lips popped out with the light pink lipstick I had on. My pink dress was made of silk, one-shouldered and covered in flowers. It was the right length, showing off my curves right below my knees. Even in these black heels, I was still a head shorter than Kieran. Kier, you don't look too bad yourself, I said, winking at him and giving him the eye. He was wearing a white button-down shirt that was rolled up to his sleeves, with dark jeans and Nike trainers. As usual, his jet black hair was styled in a mess. Yeah, I know I do, he said, leaning down and kissing my cheek, still holding my hand. I also kissed his cheek, holding on to his smooth skin for a bit longer than necessary. I knew we had to keep it innocent, especially in front of my mum and my family. Hey, Serena! He cleared his throat and slung his arm around my shoulder. You look beautiful, he kept saying, trying to impress my mom. Oh, hush, my mum said, ignoring the look I gave her. You don't have to flatter me. You do enough for me by letting my daughter stay with you until her room is done being fixed. She smiled warmly at him, but she hardly ever smiled like that unless she really trusted and knew someone. I could tell Kieran was getting uncomfortable. As I looked up at him, he looked down at me with a big smile. It was as if he'd won the lottery twice in a row. No worries, Serena. I'd do anything for her, he said sincerely. Even if it was what most guys said, I knew he really meant it because I saw his pupils get a bit bigger, which made my heart beat faster. Call me Mom, she said, adding a wink. Just to let you know, I've got a few more things to add. I told Kieran, you better be careful, and I couldn't help laughing. Aunt Sarah is checking you out. We looked towards the table where my 60-year-old aunt sat. She pushed her round glasses up, squinting at Kieran even though she was wearing glasses. When she saw us looking at her, she fluffed her auburn wig and smiled, showing off her pearly white dentures. Oh my goodness, this was like a family reunion. Everyone was asking about how I was, if I was working, whether my grades were bad or not, what I was up to now, and so on. But all I knew was that they were asking just to find something to gossip about. Some of the older ones were warm and honest, which I really liked. When I say that everyone was at the wedding, I mean everyone I knew. The Moonfire and Eclipse Pack were here, and I have to say, they looked amazing. Everyone else looked plain and dull by comparison. All my classmates were here, along with a bunch of friends and people I'd said hello to before. Even some of the girls who gave me dirty looks when Kieran and I made eye contact were there. A lot of them were the girls he played with before, and most of them were probably only 13 or 14. "Hey, let's go dance," Kieran whispered in my ear, sending shivers down my spine. I raised an eyebrow and looked straight into his eyes. "You dance?" "Oh, yeah, Talia." "He dances," Lila said, flipping her sleek straight hair behind her shoulder, her hair looking like a waterfall against that lilac dress. "Just ask the guys. He's got some moves," Cruz said, nudging Beck, who was too busy staring at Brielle. Knox just gave a nod and tucked in. Roman and Avery were amused by their antics. Brielle went red, but Damien held her tight, as if to tell Beck to back off. If you asked where Luca was, he'd probably be on the dance floor by now. Luca said the music was amazing. I couldn't help laughing again when I met Kieran's impatient eyes. "I'd love to, Kier," I said with a smile. We got up from the round table we were all sitting on, leaving them to eat while Beck and Cruz played with the pink and red floral centerpiece. I strolled towards the dance floor, which had drapes coming out from the romantic fake rooftop, with Kieran close behind. As soon as we arrived, the music changed to a slow one. Kieran pulled me close to him, his hands around my waist and his chin resting on my head. I let out a sigh, leaning into him, my head resting against his chest. I welcomed his warmth, his smell, and his erratic heartbeat. To be honest, I didn't even realize there were people there. The newlyweds were dancing too, and the other couples joined them on stage. All I felt was me and him, just living in the moment like it was our last. "You're not too bad," I joked as Kieran twirled me around. "Not too bad, then?" "Now that's a bit sore," he said, putting on a hurt face. I gasped as he expertly lowered me, him smiling broadly at me as he hovered over me. He pulled us back, touching his forehead to mine. I looked at his blue eyes, amazed at the depth and feelings that went with them. We heard someone clearing their throat. We looked away, not wanting to see, and there was Luca, standing there awkwardly. I smiled at him when he said, "Hey, man. Do you mind if I dance with Talia?" "No," I replied as Kieran let out a sigh and reluctantly let go of me. I thought it was funny how direct he was. "Come on, big boy, just one song. Also, I miss Jar." I saw Kieran flick my nose and, before I could say anything, he ran off to ask my mum if she fancied dancing. Luca put his hand in mine and pulled me close, in a friendly way, and I sighed, realizing how much I'd missed him. "I didn't know you had an older brother. And let's not forget he's my brother's best man," I said, nodding to an older-looking Luca. He was wearing a red button-down shirt and slacks, with blonde, messy hair. He had a little scruff and charming hazel eyes. Luca just gave a casual shrug and said, "That's how I knew your brother. He and Japhet, my brother, are best mates." I feel clever. "I learned something," I said, and he laughed. "You look beautiful tonight," Luca said as we swayed to the music. "What? No cheesy pick-up lines?" I gasped, secretly smiling to myself. "Be careful, Jar. Your reputation status is going low. Oh, be quiet, you little pie-eater. I'm at a wedding. I feel particularly romantic, he joked. So, why don't you ask Lila to dance? I gestured towards her, where she smiled at Beck and Cruz as they told her a story. He looked at her for a bit before a blush spread across his neck and face. Even his ears were pink. I raised an eyebrow at him, waiting for his reply. Well, because, hello, she's Lila, he sighed. I can never meet her expectations. I pinched his cheeks while he scowled at me. Oh, is the little blushing player finally shy? Has he finally found the one special crush? I cooed. He swatted my hand away and his cheeks went red. SHH, Talia. You're so loud. She's the one. I just couldn't face it, you know, he said. When I saw the look on his face and heard him say it, I gave his arm a good pinch. Ouch, he yelled, earning himself a few dirty looks. Ask her to dance. You. I said, grinding my teeth and putting my hands on my hips. He looked at me in horror as I slapped his shoulder again. Go. Okay, I'll do it, I just have to remember to. Lucas shouted as he ran over to Lila, who looked at him with her big eyes. I smiled cheekily as Kieran came back and wrapped his arms around me again. Oh, Talia, what have you done this time? He teased, kissing my forehead. They'll be thanking me later. Yeah, just after they, hey, you've really grown up. I never thought I'd see the day where she's clinging to a boy, a familiar voice said, smugly. I turned around and there he was, the person I'd been trying to avoid all night. He was holding a wine glass with a bit of red wine on the clear surface, and his other hand was holding the blonde woman's tiny waist. She was half his age. Tell me. Do I have to beat you up, Sonny, just to let you know not to hurt my daughter? Dad, I said, looking a bit annoyed at his little remark. I could feel Kieran standing up straight behind me, his chest against my back, and his hands rubbing circles on my waist. My dad's narrowed eyes shot to his hands and then back to my face again. I looked over at Fiona, who was doing her best to throw a flirtatious smile at Kieran, who was giving her the cold shoulder. She had diamonds on everything: her necklace, rings, bracelets, anklets and so on. Well, even the one strap on her inappropriate dress which was clung to her body, hugging her balloon and short enough to see her cheek popping out, was encrusted with diamonds. Fiona, I teased her as she choked on what I'd said. Tell me, honey. Is that young guy making you do all this? My dad said, looking at Kieran. No way, I laughed, patting Kieran's hand, which had gone all stiff. Don't lie to me, my dad said, while I rolled my eyes. I did my best to keep my cool, with Kieran right behind me and his breath almost touching the hair on top of my head. Oh, come on, Thomas, Fiona said in her nasal voice. Why would he go for her? I was just about to jump on her, but I wanted to hear what my dad had to say. He looked at us and I could see Kieran's hands starting to shake at my hips. I held it in both my hands, trying to calm him down. My dad's lips lifted slightly as he said, "That's exactly what I was thinking. She looks like a slut now, Thomas," Fiona said, flipping her hair. Oh, it was on. I let go of Kieran, who was already trying to go for the blonde bimbo in front of me, while tears spilled out of my eyes. I'm not even going to mention my dad. Just as my nails were about to reach her face and she let out a high-pitched scream, Kieran wrapped his arms around my waist and pushed me behind him. Luca helped hold me back while I was struggling so hard in his arms. Mr. Ainsley, I heard Kieran's tone, and it was pretty clear he was pretty fed up. I think the only person here trying to hurt her is you and, he turned his head slightly and I'm guessing it was at Fiona before continuing, Ms. Blondie over here. And if you're wondering why I'm after your daughter, it's because she's as pretty as a picture. Look, son, I don't think you know who you're talking to, my father's voice rang out. My dad had taken a step up, so now his nose was almost touching Kieran's, even though Kieran was a few inches taller. No offense, Mr. Ainsley, but I think I do, Kieran challenged. Just as my dad was about to throw a punch, Elias caught his hand and stopped him. He put himself between them to keep them apart. What's going on? Dad, this is my wedding for Christ's sake, Elias said, looking angry. I saw my dad go over to stand next to Fiona again, and her sad cries were coming out of her ugly mouth. My mum had her hands on her hips, shaking her head, her lips a thin line. The Moonfire and Eclipse Pack were already standing up in their seats, looking ready to jump out of their skins at anyone who made a sudden move. My family and everyone else just watched with their jaws on the floor. Then, all I heard was a low growl. I heard a low growl that made me turn my head all over, looking for where it was coming from. It was a bit creepy and I got the shivers. Everyone looked at me, and I was surprised to find that the strange noise came from deep down in my belly to the back of my throat. It was only then that I realized my lips were pulled back, showing off my clenched teeth. Wow, her eyes, Elias said under his breath as I saw the world changing to strange colors. What on earth is going on? Kieran, get her out of here and calm her down. Now, my brother insisted. Kieran grabbed my hand and pulled me out of the crowd. We went to the grassy plains of my backyard, where the wedding wasn't being held. He quickly set me down on the tree stump. I didn't care if my dress got dirty, so I slumped down onto it and tried to calm my heart rate, but it just wouldn't go down. Kieran grabbed my face and made me look into his clear blue eyes, which were shining in the moonlight. Talia, listen to me. Don't worry about it, it didn't happen. Chill out. You have to calm down, he said, rubbing his rough thumb against my cheek. As my heart rate slowed down, my vision returned. I smiled at Kieran as he let out a sigh, wiping the sweat from his forehead. Gosh, I felt so horrible, I started, but then I felt this really sharp pain in my stomach. It made me fall forwards and I started shaking as I shouted. I shut my eyes, trying to get rid of the pain, but all I could feel was the tears running down my face. To make matters worse, I heard the crackling of bones and the pain of my arm going in a painful angle. Talia! Kieran yelled frantically and I was surprised to hear his voice above my screams and the crackling of my bones. The Iron Justice POVO, what a silly little girl. I know her secret, and so does everyone else in her family and her so-called group of friends, but she doesn't. They think I'm clueless, but they're wrong. I learned so much from it. I grew up with it. I grew up to hate werewolves. They didn't even know I was at the wedding. They had no idea I was so close to them, just a few feet away from that naive girl and her silly boyfriend. Or should I say mate? I actually played a big part in the wedding, but they didn't suspect a thing because I acted innocent and clueless. I smiled wickedly in my office, which was pretty dark, and I was still wearing the fancy clothes I'd worn to the special event. She got angry and I wanted to see that the whole time I was here. I couldn't stop thinking about the time she growled, her eyes got all big and bright, and her pupils dilated. That was all it took to confirm my thoughts about her. She was the one we had to kill, but let's tease her and warn her first. She might act like she's not scared, but I know her well enough to know it's a lie. She's a bit of a loose cannon, if you know what I mean. I'll do whatever it takes to make sure she's gone. I threw the cup on my desk across my room and it crashed, the shards falling to the ground. I pushed my hair, which was already a bit of a mess, out of my face. I was gobsmacked when I found out she was the one, though. I'm not going to be popular after this, that's for sure. But did I care? No. I heard a familiar four-tap knock on my office door and I smiled wickedly again. Come in, I yelled. The door creaked as the young man came in. I've trusted him for a long time now and I can definitely count on him for the rest of my life. His brown eyes had a wicked glint in them and his sinister smirk was obvious. Even this guy was someone Talia would never have anticipated. He sat down in the seat opposite me, crossing his arms above his chest. You looked good tonight, he said. Perfect timing, eh? Cheers, partner, I replied. Did you get it done? He nodded in a cheeky way, holding up the bottle of toxin I'd given him earlier and slamming it down on my desk. I'll be honest with you, he sighed. You're good at it. And you're no exception. Now I've got another job for you, I said, rummaging in my drawer and tossing my prized possession onto the white wooden desk. I smiled when I saw all the pictures of pretty, little Talia rummaging around in my drawer. My partner looked at it with awe as he gently touched it. He sat back in his chair, his eyes twinkling as he kept his stare on the object that glinted under the dim light. He gave me a smirk and said, So, what do you want me to do with a gun? I could feel my bones breaking as I heard that cracking sound in my ears. I was screaming and sobbing all through the night. I couldn't think of anything as I felt my sweat run down my body and the tears rolling down from my eyes that were shut tight. I yelled again and put on my seatbelt as I felt my leg twist in pain. It felt like my muscles were being punched, my bones were being chopped up, and my head was about to explode. The pain was unbearable and all I wanted was for it to stop. I felt myself being lifted up and I tried hard not to hit the person, but that ended when I felt my gut being squeezed and my shoulder bone being dislocated. I kept my eyes shut as the person put me down slowly, the dead leaves on the ground poking my back and arms. It would have been painful, but nothing compared to the pain I was in. I cried again and rolled when I felt my ribs being messed with. I opened my eyes for a second and saw the world glowing around me. I could even see the spider up on the highest branch of the tree. I could soon see that I was in the forest at the back of my house. I noticed that my dress was tearing, the silk spreading apart as my body seemed to get bigger by the second. I closed my eyes again when I felt the pain in my mouth. It was itchy and I wailed in pain as I felt my jaw being pushed out and stretched. My teeth felt like they were being yanked with pliers. 5 minutes later, I felt my body start to calm down. I actually felt really good. I felt better than I ever had. I let out a sigh, but it sounded different to my ears. It sounded more like a huff. I thought that was a bit odd. But everything about this night felt a bit weird. So, I quickly brushed it off and wiped my forehead. I stopped my hand there to take a closer look. Or maybe paw. I was totally confused, and no one could explain it. I looked everywhere, and my eyes fell on the pink material on the ground. I could even see the dust on it and tiny grains of dirt on my discarded, shredded dress. My shoes were even shredded into pieces. Hey, I was actually out in the forest at night. How come I could see so clearly? Then, I saw a good-looking boy with clear blue eyes coming towards me, but he looked a bit nervous. His blue eyes showed he was shocked, and there was something else on his face. It was a bit indecisive. It was sort of in between understanding and being disgusted. I heard my own whining coming from my mouth like a dog whines. Then I looked at the boy again and all I could think was one word. Hey! Kieran's point of view. It was pretty awful to watch Talia go through her change. I could see her bones twisting in ways I couldn't even imagine, and it was really painful to watch. I really wished I could go up and give her a hug, but I had to let her do this on her own, just like I had done. Trust me. Every time I heard her whimper or cry, I jumped out of my seat, but I stopped myself from getting up. My eyes were tired and my hair was a mess from my hand constantly running through it. Every wolf had to do their first change on their own. It was the only way they could carry themselves for the rest of their lives. I wish Serena had told her that this would be happening soon. That she would be turning into a werewolf, just like us. I knew as soon as I saw it that night that her bedroom window had been vandalized. Serena promised me not to tell anyone. She said her family was a late bloomer. Even Elias was a werewolf, but Serena had told me that he hated it. He really didn't like feeling pain all the time. She told me he's finding the whole werewolf process tough, and still is. But I didn't get why Serena wasn't one. I tried to work the puzzle pieces, but I'm missing a lot of them. My thoughts were suddenly interrupted by one more guttural cry before it all went quiet. Then, I knew one thing. She finally made it. Her body spasmed one more time before her fur appeared and her bones changed into a werewolf form in a flash. And there she was, so heartbreakingly beautiful that I couldn't help but shed a tear. I cried because my friend had finally found herself. When I stood up, I suddenly stopped mid-stride and looked at her. I could see that she was confused when she saw her paw. But that's not what got me. We were both pretty confused. No werewolf had white fur, you know. They didn't have a perfect heart either, as shown by the black marks on their forehead. They also didn't have teeth bigger than Talia's. And they certainly didn't have the same glow the moon gave off as it came out from their fur. Then, as if to taunt me, all my questions and explanations came back to bite me. Talia was a healer. I was pretty shocked when I took a few steps towards Talia, and I could feel my throat closing. I was so disgusted, trust me. I didn't think the stories about one healer being left alive were true. No one did. They were the reasons why wolves were made, sacrificing their bodies to the full moon, and why my ancestor had lost his son. I was disgusted, to say the least. Scowling at Talia felt wrong and right at the same time. I guess the question is, should I hate her for who she is, given that she didn't choose to be or love her always and didn't care what form she was in? I'm torn between using my instincts as a werewolf to hate on healers, or using my heart and accepting that it wasn't her fault. I was so clueless. That was until she looked at me in the eyes and I saw her wolf-like grin. Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates, link is given in description. Rest audiobook will be continued in next episode.